Before we get to today's show, I want to share a message from my friend Laura Joyce Davis from Shelter in Place podcast.
Hey friends, we have officially opened enrollment for our next audio storytelling class, Labs Weekender. If you'd like to master the art and science of audio storytelling and create the kinds of episodes that you hear at Shelter in Place, but are sick of being on a screen, this course was made for you. Every week, you'll get a new module in your inbox to help you build a complete toolkit for narrative podcasting. We've made this course flexible for busy people, with audio tutorials and a private podcast feed so that you can listen and learn while you go for a walk outside. A lot of the exercises are designed to get you away from your screen. Our next class starts June 1st, so you can sign up at shelterinplacepodcast.org/labs.
Today's episode is part of our Season 2 series on the theme of home. Welcome to another episode of Art Heals All Wounds. I'm your host, Pam Uzel. On this show, we meet artists transforming lives with their work. When you were growing up, did you have a dream? I hope you have a dream still, but did you have one of those crazy dreams that you have when you're a teenager? Can you remember what it was? Can you remember how it felt when you wanted so badly to get your shot at that dream? My guest on today's episode, Ernesto Diaz-Infante, was a gifted musician from an early age. His family knew it. In fact, people in the wider community of his hometown of Salinas, California knew it. So much so that when members of the Mexican rock band Cielo Azul began asking around for a keyboardist to go on the road with them, people pointed them to Ernesto. This was it. His dream to be in a rock band was happening for Ernesto. He dropped out of school and went on tour with the band Cielo Azul. The only problem was, Ernesto was only 13 years old. Well, it was all too much too soon. I'll let Ernesto give the details in a little bit, but his dream of being in a rock band didn't quite work out the way he thought. So, is this a tragic story? Not really, because often going for your dream and failing at it is how we clear the way for what we really want. This is what happened for Ernesto. He was able to move on to find his true calling in music as an avant garde and experimental composer and guitarist. The music we're listening to right now is just one of his many compositions. You're listening to Art Heals All Wounds. Listen and let us inspire you. Ernesto Diaz-Infante grew up in the Salinas Valley in California, in the small towns of Salinas and Prunedale. This area of California is known for two things: agriculture and the author John Steinbeck. Ernesto's father was an inventor of agricultural machinery. One summer, he had Ernesto work in the fields to see what the work was like and to motivate him to do anything else. This experience working in the fields shaped Ernesto's worldview and political beliefs, leaving him with deep convictions for the need of economic and social justice. After leaving the band Cielo Azul, Ernesto was able to pick up his education again, eventually getting his MFA in music composition from California Institute of the Arts. The musicians he would study with there blew his thinking about music wide open, and he moved into more experimental, avant-garde, and improvisational work. Ernesto flourished, doing many artist residencies, starting music festivals, and curating live shows to expose more people to experimental music. Ernesto found the music that kept him inspired, but that was only part of his dream. 20 years ago, he met the filmmaker Marjorie Sturm. They shared a passion for the arts, for social justice, and each other. They're now raising 2 children together. Ernesto had a dream of creating a home with a partner who shares his sensibilities and passions. Their home is one where their kids are free to express themselves and find their own passions. It's a great dream to have come true. Probably better than being in a rock band, even. I've asked Ernesto to come on the show to talk about his music, but also how his life growing up shaped the home that he and Marjorie have created. Before we meet today's guest, I want to tell you about an app called Newsly. Newsly is an all-in-one audio super app for iOS and Android. There really hasn't been an app like Newsly before now. Newsly picks up all of the trending articles on the web and reads them to you in a natural human voice. You can find any topic you're interested in, sports, politics, or art. I've loved using this app. I listen to it when I'm commuting or when I'm gardening or while I'm cooking, anytime where I want to catch a little bit of news, but my hands are full or I can't stop to read. You can also find trending podcasts from over 50 countries on Newsly, including Art Heals All Wounds. Newsly has become my go-to listening app for podcasts. If you want to try Newsly yourself, just download it from www.newsly.me. And if you use the promo code ARTHEALS, you'll get a free 1-month premium subscription. I'll include all of this info in the show notes so that you can just click on the link and use the Art Heals promo to get your free trial. Now, let's meet this week's guest. Hi, Ernesto. Thank you so much for being on this episode of Art Heals All Wounds. Can you start by telling us who you are and what you do?
I am Ernesto Diaz-Infante, and I'm a composer and guitarist, and I live in San Francisco.
Yes, and you are such a prolific composer and producer. Can you talk a little bit about the type of music that you compose and that you play?
I do experimental music, avant garde music, mostly in improvisation, free instruction improvisation, and mostly on guitar-based music.
Can you go a little deeper? Because a lot of people don't really know what avant garde music might be like. When you say that, what does that mean to you?
It just kind of means just sort of a freedom in expressing music and sound. It's usually non-commercial, it's not like really the mainstream. It's more experimental, experimenting with sounds or rhythm or harmonies or extended techniques and things like that. Yeah.
Well, I have some things to ask you about your background, but before we do that, I just want to what drew you to this type of music?
I think I've always been curious about sound, when I was a young person, and I've always been open to that and experimenting. And when I was younger, I was just experimenting with just kind of like song form, making songs and kind of breaking out from like traditional harmonies and stuff like that. And as I got older, I started being exposed to more avant-garde music, especially in college, to like, Anthony Braxton and 20th century music and all these different composers like Arnold Schoenberg and Stravinsky. So that really opened my world, and just in terms of hearing things and also trying to make things.
So you talked about when you were younger, what was the role of music in your family? Was your family very musical? What type of music were they listening to? What was your family like when you were a kid?
I was the only musician in the family. My mom and dad really appreciated music, and they had all sorts of types of music, especially Mexican music, Spanish music on rancheras, and sometimes mariachi music, and also pop music, Beatles and stuff like that. So my mom really had like music a lot playing. So, she was always like turning music on and stuff.
I'm really curious to know, did you already feel like that type of music wasn't for you, or did you also enjoy their taste in music that they were exposing you to?
I think I liked it, and I have like really kind of nostalgic memories of like my grandmother being in the kitchen and listening to her Spanish music, Mexican music. But I think as I got older and I got into like rock music, I kind of was more rebellious and kind of like, oh, I don't want to do that music. But then I always kind of like gravitated towards it, because I played in like Mexican rock bands and stuff like that, and or I played at church. I was the organist there at the Sunday Spanish Mass, and
Oh, wow.
so yeah, so I got exposed to that kind of things. Yeah,
That's amazing. How old were you when you were the organist at the mass?
I think I was around 13 or 14, 15. It was in my teen years. And I did that for a while. And that's how I got really into improvisation, because the pastor, the priest would say, play a little bit something here. And I'd be like, what am I going to do? So I just kind of would improvise on some chords and some melodies. And that's how I got into like improvisation as well.
Wow. Wow. And then was this about the same time? What is it? You said you played in Mexican rock bands. Can you go into a little more detail about that?
I played in this group called Cielo Azul, and when I was in my teens, and it was this Mexican kind of rock band. They play cumbias, they play rancheras, ballads, and it was a lot of fun. And it was a really just a crazy story how they found me is that the lead singer was in the area and he was working in the strawberry fields and he was asking around he was looking for a keyboard player. And there happened to be a friend who was working there too, and she said, oh, I have a friend who plays the organ at the church, and he's really good. And so she gave him my phone number, and then I got this phone call from him, and he said, hey, I'm looking for a keyboardist, I love to hear you play. And so he came over to my place, and my parents were there, and he met my parents and stuff. And so I played for him a couple of tunes, and he's like, great, do you want to be in my band? And so he talked to my parents, and my parents said, oh, it was okay. And it was really a surreal moment. It was just kind of like, okay, I'll do this. But I did that for about a year, and I dropped out of high school, and we played all over California, different like armory halls and stuff like that. And it was just a lot of freedom and a lot of craziness going on. But what happened was I got hooked on coke, and that kind of just
Oh my
ended
God.
the whole term of it. Yeah. I just had to go home and I called my mom and my mom, saved me. She, got me and so I went back to school, but they're still around, you can find them on streaming services. I'm on one of the album covers and stuff like that.
Really? Oh my gosh. I've got to look this up the second we finish this. So, how old were you when this happened when you joined this band?
I was like, I think it was my freshman year, it was 13, 14. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. And I'm so curious, why did your parents decide to let you go tour with this band?
They were just kind of like they had this kind of like if this is what you want to do, you want to follow your dream, we support you and stuff. And plus, they didn't have much education, and so they hadn't finished high school, so they weren't really pushing that. They're just saying, if you don't want to do school, you're gonna have to work, or do something. And so they were just kind of just being. They thought they were being supportive by allowing me to go, but it was, I was really young. I thought it was really kind of
Yeah.
surreal.
Was any of it fun for you at all? Or was it immediately just too much too soon?
The making of the music was fun. Just learning all this music and playing it was a lot of fun, and the traveling was fun and stuff. But some of it was kind of like too much too soon. It was just kind of like it just we had to play under another group name and play in bars at night to pay the rent and stuff. So that I got to see that whole scene, people throwing bottles or getting in
Mm.
fights or something like that. It's just a little bit too much. And just the lifestyle, I was trying to go to school as well, trying to go to high school, and I just couldn't, just being up late at night. And, I finally dropped out, but I went back.
Wow. That's an amazing story. I mean, I had a lot of freedom as a teenager as well, but not quite that much. But I also really admire the fact that your parents had that kind of faith in you,
Yeah.
that you could go off and travel with this band and that it would be okay. And then I also admire the fact that your mom came to get you. and saved
Yeah.
you. It
Yeah.
actually sounds like their hearts were really with you the whole time.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. They were just great. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because you definitely did finish high school and then much more. What didn't you go to music school somewhere? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I went to UC Santa Barbara in the College of Creative Studies. I studied music composition there, and I got
Mm,
a BA there, and then I went to, and then from there I went to Cal Arts and got an MFA in music composition, and I got to study with Stephen L. Moscow and Wadada Leo Smith, who's this great jazz musician, creative musician, and
mm,
that totally opened my world. It's just like, whew, just I got to be exposed to all this great music and people who artists who are really committed to their art, and and it was just a, a great time, you know.
mm. I'm just curious if that do you think it was being exposed to these other people and, that really gave you the confidence to pursue music that is not pop music or rock music or any type of music that you grew up with? Do you think that was from being exposed to these people?
Definitely, it's just they were just kind of these kind of role models, of like, what this path would be like if I took this path. And they were very supportive. At the time I was writing music, so I was notating music. So, I would go show them the music and they would give me some feedback. Or the year that the semester I studied with Wadada Leo Smith, I was showing my scores and we talk about, he would bring his scores and we'd be kind of comparing notes and giving me suggestions and stuff. So definitely, it was just like a really good experience.
Well, you and I know each other because you are partners with Marjorie Sturm, and she's a filmmaker, and she was on the podcast last season. I feel like either she or you, one of you has told me that you used to play pretty large venues. Am I confusing this or is this true?
Usually the audiences for the music are usually small, but I played like for this Chicano art exhibit in Madrid, and they found me on the net
Mm,
and they flew us out there. Marjorie had her film projected, and one of the project we were working is called Sun Hills Lives, of like these sunset imagery with political imagery going on. So that one was a pretty big event, just being around all these Chicano artists and having this concert that I did. So that was one of the big ones. And then when I was organizing the Big Sur Experimental Music Festival, towards the end, we had a big turnout. We had a big audience because it involved a lot of musicians. And so, they would bring their friends. So it was like over like 100 people, over 100 musicians plus their friends and so forth. And so that was at the Henry Miller Library down in Big Sur that happened.
oh, yeah. Can you explain a little bit more about that? It was the Big Sur Experimental Music Festival?
Yes.
What was that?
It was just it started as a festival that a couple of us organized down at the Henry Miller Library, and we just wanted to make things happen, and we just invited some groups to play, and it was like an all-day festival. And towards the end, I did it for a couple of years, and then I think about the fourth year, we did this bigger kind of music sound installation where we'd have these musicians kind of like shifting, playing in different shifts with different musicians. And it was an ongoing piece for about 8 hours. So it involved a lot of musicians, a lot
Mm,
of people kind of coming and going and playing with different contexts and stuff like that.
wow. Wow. Is it still going on? Well, obviously, there's been a pandemic, but is it something that has continued, or was it just a limited time thing?
No, it just stopped. It just stopped when I stopped organizing. I mean, they tried it for another year, but it just didn't keep going, But I was doing a lot of organizing, just trying to make things happen and just trying to get the music out there and people exposed.
Well, as I said earlier, you're incredibly prolific. I was just going through your work. Is it mostly posted on Bandcamp, or are there other places that we can find your work?
Mostly on Bandcamp right now. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. You have so much music that's come out, it seems like in the last 2 or 3 years. I'm wondering if it's music that you've been both recording and releasing during this pandemic time, or is it music tracks that you already had, but now you just sort of had the time to get more of them out there?
Combination of both. I did record during the pandemic, and I released some music, some solo guitar music, and I did a lot of recording during the pandemic. And then I had some music that I had recorded, and I hadn't done anything with it, so I started editing it and putting it out there. But you can find my music on Bandcamp, and you go to my page. It's Ernesto Diaz-Infante.bandcamp.com, and you can find my music there.
Well, so I want to ask you some questions about you now as a parent. You sort of given me kind of a portrait of you as the kid growing up in your house. But I've been to your house. Your house amazes me. There are like maybe always two different guitars out available, and your kids are very musical as well. And it just feels like you could walk into your house, pick up an instrument, and just start playing. And I'm really curious to know about your approach in terms of being an artist, your partner's an artist. What does that mean for you also as a parent?
It just makes the time much more valuable, more crucial. I, we're trying to raise our kids, Ezra and Shoshana, in kind of a stable and loving home, and I try to expose them to music. I don't try to really force it on them. I just I have it on, or I practice, or I'll have a piece on and I'll talk to them about what the music is or what's about. It's just a really loving home. We've created. It's really beautiful. I've always wanted that. I always thought of having that, and I'm just happy. I'm with another I have a relationship with Marjorie, and she's also leading the creative life, and we spend a lot of time collaborating, talking about ideas and music, and I record a lot of music for her film and video projects. She's always saying, "I need more music," and I'm like,
Mhm.
"Okay, I'll, come up with something," and so it's very kind of a creative environment. We also have like the daily grind and all that going on too.
Right. Well, there's, of course, yeah, it can't just be this utopia of not having to do dishes or laundry or vacuum or
Right.
anything like that.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly. But yeah, but
yeah.
the music gives me the outlet. It's like some people do rock climbing, I make music. And so when I'm feeling kind of like overwhelmed or frustrated, I just turn to my guitar and start strumming or finger picking or something like that. That's what I love about improvisation. You can just keep exploring and expressing yourself.
Mm, yeah. Well, I have said this to Marjorie before, but I'll say it again to you. I love your family. I
Oh, thank
think
you.
that your kids are two of the nicest kids I know. And they still, for the most part, like to hang out with you, and they're both teenagers, and I just kept thinking, probably of all the kids who had to go through the pandemic and be isolated and stay home, your kids probably suffered the least because they still like you. And so I just to me, your family is just like a great model for other families, which is why I wanted to ask you about it. Would you categorize your family now as a parent as being similar or different to your one growing up? Or what values? I don't want to try and get you into a position of critiquing your family growing up because
Right.
that's not really my question. My question is how are the values the same or how are they different?
There's different things we're doing in terms of how I grew up and the values and stuff like that. Putting more emphasis on education, really spending a lot of time with them and hearing them out and, talking to them. But I think we've instilled some of the values, we learned from my parents, our parents and stuff like that. But it's just trying to create just a loving and stable home, where they're just free to express themselves and feel free, safe.
And now I'm going to jump topics a little bit because I meant to ask you this earlier. But I also read in an interview with you that it was really important to you to, and I'm never going to get this quote right, to kind of dismantle all of the usual expectations and trappings of the guitar. Does that sound even remotely like something you would have said, or am I completely mangling a quote?
No, it's on the point. Yeah. Yeah, I've always tried to experiment with the guitar and go beyond just playing melodies and riffs and harmonies and stuff. So I spent a lot of time researching different kind of music, other composers, other guitarists who've explored the guitar in a non-idiomatic way. And so it's been this kind of journey. And I do sometimes, go to sometimes a basic melody or a basic riff or something, but that when I'm improvising, especially in the free improvisation, I'm usually pushing myself, trying to create these new sounds and sculpt them in time and in the moment. So it's pretty exciting because I'm always hearing new music, new guitarists doing things, and I'm just kind of, oh wow, they're doing that, or I could add to this or something like that. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Do you ever just sit down and play like Beatles or something, some of your other typical pop songs, or is that just something that you wouldn't sit down and do?
Not really, not anymore. I sometimes try, I'll hear Ezra playing something, a riff or something, and I'll be like, oh, okay, I'll try it. He's also a guitarist too, and so he's also
That's your
inspired.
son.
My son Ezra, yeah, I hear him practicing, and so I get inspired by that too. I'm like, oh wow, he's playing this way, or he's doing this or that. So
Yeah. Does he play more traditional music?
yeah, he does. He plays more like rock and stuff, but we've experimented. We've played together, and we did an
Hmm.
album on Bandcamp, a little duo album. We just it was more like improvisation, free
Ah,
improvisation and stuff.
oh, that's so cool. And also your daughter Shauna.
Yeah,
Shauna plays a very mean ukulele. And I don't say that
she does.
as a joke. She is really good. Did you teach her that or did she teach?
She took lessons at school, elementary school and stuff. So yeah, she hasn't been playing a lot, but she's been more focusing on her artwork, her visual artwork and stuff like that.
Mm.
But she loves music. I'm always playing her music and turning her into jazz or classical or rock or experimental and stuff like that. So she's always a little bit like, if there's no music on, she's kind of like, where's the music?
Oh, that's really nice. That's very nice. Well, you've already said earlier, but just for one last time, where can people find out more about you and your music, Ernesto?
But you can find my music on Bandcamp, and my pager is Ernesto Diaz-Infante bandcamp.com. And I also have two new CD releases. One of them is called Vacilando EPs, and it's on Ramble Records from Australia, and it's
Mhm. Mm.
ramble.records.bandcamp.com. And I have another release, Saca los Cuernos al Sol, and that's on Headlights label. That's headlightsrecordings.blogspot.com.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for talking about your I mean, I wish hmm, maybe we'll have you on another time. I would love to just, like, even break down the music more. Maybe if I have your permission, I can add a track in the intro or something.
Sure. Yeah. Whatever track you want. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming and talking about your music and about your family.
Thank you. And thank you for having me.
You're listening to Art Heals All Wounds. I'm so grateful to Ernesto Diaz-Infante for being a guest on this episode to talk about his music and how he and partner Marjorie Sturm are creating a home for their children to also explore the arts. If you want to hear more of Ernesto's music, one of the best places to visit is Bandcamp. Go to bandcamp.com and type Ernesto Diaz-Infante in the search bar. You can also find him on Apple Music and Spotify. I also highly recommend going to paxrecordings.com. While you're checking out music, please check out music by the band Cielo Azul. You can find their work on Apple Music and Spotify. I'll include all of this information in the show notes for you. The music you've heard in this podcast is Yellow Light District by Lobo Loco. Beethoven's Piano Sonata No. 15 in D major was performed by Karine Golanian. The music you heard in the opening was by Quetzal, Cielo Azul, and today's guest, Ernesto Diaz-Infante. This podcast was edited by Eva Hristova. I'm so glad you found this podcast. If you're interested in learning more about these artists, sign up for our newsletter at arthealsallwoundspodcast.com. You'll get more backstories on everyone we talk to on the show.